Okay, so like I said, we're gonna talk a little bit about plyometrics and what plyometrics mean for runners. And any ideas what even plyometrics means? Anybody know what it, when you saw this guy from SCAR is gonna come talk about plyometrics? What is that? Any idea? It's actually a method of training that is fairly high of fairly high intensity, but really what it does is it helps to prepare you for some specific parts of your run, especially downhills. So it works on a kind of a neuromuscular improvement idea. So when you stretch a muscle, what happens? Bend down and stretch a muscle, what happens? It says, stop, where are you going, right? So what is it that's telling you not to go there? There's two things, right? The tension within the muscle and the tendons, so kind of like a rubber band, right? Stretch a rubber band, it wants to spring back. So that's part of what creates that tension. The other part of what creates that tension is a neuromuscular feedback system. My hand's behind my back, right? I can't see it, but I know it's there. How do I know it's there? Because I have little receptors in my joints and my muscles that tell my brain where my body is in space. These receptors also respond to dynamic motion. So when you quickly stretch a muscle, there is a receptor in that muscle, and that receptor says, hey, we need to contract. We need to save the muscle from any potential injury. We need to contract. So that quick contraction that occurs when the muscle's stretched kind of initiates a preventive, both an injury preventative component as well as increasing the tone or the strength of the contraction. So we typically think of plyometrics in terms of developing power and dynamic movement. So you'll see football players that are doing big plyometric motions, jumping off big 36-inch boxes. I'm not sure if I've really ever had a marathoner or a half marathoner jumping off a 36-inch box. I'm not sure if that makes a whole lot of sense. But it does make a whole lot of sense to train the system in such a manner that you will kind of develop a response to that downhill and uphill motion. How many of you guys did the Fontana? I think it was the Fontana half. Well, it starts here and ends down here.
No. Yeah, a couple years ago.
How sore were you the next day? Pretty sore, huh?
I was done running downhill.
Exactly. That downhill motion creates a type of contraction that's called an eccentric contraction. So we can have our muscle kind of contract three different ways. The muscle will develop tension and shorten. That's called concentric contraction. So a shortening type of contraction. The muscle can develop tension and not go anywhere. Okay? So I'm doing this. My biceps is contracting, but it's not going anywhere. That's called an isometric contraction. And then an eccentric contraction is the type of contraction that the muscle's developing tension, but the external load is higher. So it's actually lengthening while it's developing tension. That's an eccentric contraction. We live in a very eccentric world. Every time you run, every time your foot hits the ground, your calf, your quad, and your glutes are all contracting eccentrically. So if I'm on a downhill run like Fontana, each step is a little bit further. It's a little bit more of an eccentric load. And with each eccentric contraction, you increase your risk for developing delayed onset muscle soreness, and in some cases, injury. So plyometrics for runners, distance runners, is really designed to kind of overcome that risk for eccentric loading and eccentric injury. So that's kind of what we want to do today. Now, I can get up here and I can talk for hours on this stuff, and I know you guys don't even care about listening to me much longer than about what I've talked about. But what I do want to do is I want to take everybody through a little plyometric session. okay? Because I think you guys will get a lot more out of that anyway than listening to me. This is what happened. I was a professor at Chapman University for about 10 years, and so I've learned to read the faces right before the tomatoes are going to start to fly. So what I want to do is take you through a little plyometric session. Now, the thing with plyometrics is it has the potential to be very high intensity. So you don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm going to go do my plyos and start doing stuff, because you'll hurt yourself. They're hard. Now, we'll go through a progression, and we're not going to get to the point where we're doing really high intensity stuff. We're going to do kind of an entry level, and we're just going to do a few, because as I understand, Bob was saying that you guys all have a race next weekend. The last thing I want to do is